The economic downturn may be far-reaching, but there are plenty of places in the world where the words recession, layoffs, and foreclosures have little meaning. It's the majority world, where 80% of humanity lives on less than $10 a day, where 1 out of every 2 children born will be poor, where access to clean water and basic sanitation remains elusive. Poverty is hard to define, and even harder to confront. Chris Heuertz was a seminary student backpacking through India when he first glimpsed what poverty looked like. And there was no better person to help him see into it and beyond it than Mother Teresa.
I spent a couple months in Calcutta working with Mother Teresa. In those first 2 months, working in the House for the Dying, I carried out nearly 50 dead bodies. And as a student, that was devastating. I mean, even as an adult, that would be devastating.
But even worse than carrying out the corpses was taking out the trash.
In the House for the Dying, we just fill this trash bin up with just the worst stuff you can imagine. Clothes that were just covered in filth and vomit and diarrhea that we couldn't wash out, or we wouldn't wash out. And when folks would come in and their hair was all matted or full of lice, we'd have to shave their heads or cut their beards. We'd throw all that away. And a lot of the folks in the House for the Dying were suffering from tuberculosis, and some of it was early stage. They would just spit mucus, sometimes bloody mucus, in these little clay cups, and we'd throw that away. And needles, the disposable syringes, all of that would go into the trash. And then after a meal, if there were banana peels or a mango seed or rice that somebody wasn't able to finish, that would also go into the trash. And then two folks would carry this trash bin out to a heap, a little dump area that was sort of in the center of this slum. And all the kids from the slum would of course climb up on this pile of trash and start picking through the garbage, looking for things to recycle, looking for things to salvage, looking to see if there's any scraps of food. And it was terrible. I mean, it was terrible to see how desperate these children were in their poverty.
The experience broke him, but it also made him ask a lot of questions. One in particular troubled him. How can a good God allow such suffering?
We can pick up the scriptures, and there's passage after passage after passage where God says that God defends those who are poor. God provides for those who are poor. God seats the lowly with princes and princesses. God hears the cries of those who are pleading for mercy and justice. But really, if you look at the world, that's not happening as a rule. And that's a generalization. Certainly there are pockets of hope, and there are communities that are incubators of restoration, but 30,000 children will fall today because they don't have something to eat, and their prayers are going unanswered. And I think we have to ask some really hard questions about that. Is God a liar? And is the scriptures full of ideals, or are we doing something wrong as a Christian community that's supposed to be embodying God's love for a world that's broken and crying out for mercy?
As Mother Teresa's life demonstrated, actions speak louder than words. And then there's going to live among the poor, embodying Christ in a community. And that's what started Chris Heuertz on his journey into poverty, or as he would call it, a journey into the heart of God. It's the Word Made Flesh, a nonprofit organization that seeks to serve the poorest of the poor by living among them.
We're really careful that we don't say we're ministering to the poor, but that we're in ministry among our friends who are poor. So there's a spirit of submission and reciprocity. And so we say that we're trying to recover the traditional donor-receptor roles in mission, and we say that we follow our friends who are poor to God's heart.
Founded in 1991, they're now in nearly every continent of the world. And while they're there to work and serve, the way they minister is through community. A concept that isn't easy to understand, especially for North Americans.
Community isn't commune. We don't sort of all live together. And community isn't uniformity. Community is what we put into it. And it's a place of self-sacrifice. It's a place of being able to suffer with and suffer for. And I think community becomes a mirror.
Though it may involve self-sacrifice, Heuertz says there's something divine about community. And by living in the slums of the world, he's uncovered many riches among the trash. Treasures he shares in his book, Simple Spirituality. The message may be simple, but Heuertz's job is to translate it to a world that has never encountered extreme poverty. And it's the power of words that brought him here tonight.
I went to one of the Word Made Flesh communities and they gave me this journal. And on the way home from Bolivia, I read that journal and cried on the plane as the truth of the words was hitting my soul.
Mark Peterson runs a foundation that supports innovative missions work around the world. What impressed him about Word Made Flesh wasn't what they did, but how they did it.
The thing that really has hit me about Word Made Flesh is seeing individuals who have the potential to live very comfortable lives. They're educated people. They are people who have all kinds of resources available to them, such as in the United States or in Canada. And they choose to go and live in the slums and favelas of the developing world.
And it was really hard for me to walk on this.
And that's why Heuertz is in Canada, to find those kind of people who will partner with Word Made Flesh and go. Patricia Holroyd is one of those people. She's already seen poverty up close in the Philippines and will be making her way to live in a favela in Brazil.
My place in life, my position that I have, is not something that I earned. It was something that was given to me, and that other people have no opportunity sometimes to access that.
And so we work with a lot of populations of kids.
Putting a name and face to poverty makes it personal. And Heuertz says it also helps to change attitudes about ownership and entitlement.
What we really want to do as a community is recognize where we do have access, sustainable access to opportunity and resource, and to recognize that that's not mine, and if I think it is, then I've stolen that. I've not only stolen that from God, I've stolen that from my neighbors, from my brothers and sisters. To this young
but Heuertz isn't suggesting everyone sell everything they own and embrace poverty either.
You know, I don't think it's so much what we give, but it's what we keep. And I think that's a really important conversation that Christians want to have. I think we want to talk about the transparency of hey, what are we earning, what are we making, what do we have? And I think that's fine, and I think that's a good conversation, but I think we even need to take that a little bit further and say, but what are we letting go of? I think the more we perceive simplicity around sort of the accumulation of something, we've missed the spirit of it. Simplicity for simplicity's sake is legalism, but simplicity as it relates to relationships and humanity becomes redemptive.
And so what can we do? Heuertz says we need to look at the resources we have within and without and settle the question of who owns it. Once we do, he says, you never know where you'll end up or how God will use you to bring himself to others. But there's one important ingredient you need, something Mother Teresa taught him.
There's nobody, of course, there was nobody in the world like her. And she would come in, it's like just this breeze of grace and love. And before I left, she asked me to stay seated and she wanted to go get me something. And she brought me back this little prayer card. And then she started tapping on my chest and she said, I have one last question for you. And I was like, yeah, anything. And she's like, I just want to know if Jesus is in your heart. And I was really caught off guard because most Protestants aren't sort of that aggressive. I mean, I get hit up all the time, but most Protestants aren't that aggressive with me. But I was like, yes, Mother, Jesus is in my heart. And it was really
in Mississauga, Denise, Lodde, 100 Huntley Street.